Hello everyone and welcome to the 10th episode of Matukate, and it's a Q&A session this time around. And I had asked you people to drop some questions on my Instagram account, and I have got some questions and I'll try and answer them in this podcast. So let's get started. Well, the first two questions I can take together. It's from photograph Hari, uh, genius username, and Yogi Posani. Check out photographer Hari. He does some really cool aviation photography. Check his Instagram account. And he asks, how did it all start? And Yogi Posani asks, what inspired you to start this podcast? Uh, well, this is not my first podcast. This is my second podcast, and the first one I started with my friend here, Sai Shekhar. Uh, I probably want to start it because it was around the time of first lockdown, and because there was nothing much going on in anyone's life at that point. I wanted some. I wanted to try something new, and I had been listening to a lot of podcasts up until then, and I thought, why not make one? And I discussed this idea with my friend, and he was really happy to co-host my first podcast with me. And yeah, and that's how we started it. It was called Thoughtsilla, and it was just an audio podcast. It wasn't a video and audio podcast like this one. But getting started was, I think, the second one that I started was pretty easy for me to in some areas, but for when I started at first, because you had to record all these podcasts remotely. I tried out so many softwares because there isn't a lot you can do in audio processing. I mean, uh, the most like the 90% part of the quality of the audio recording should come from the source itself, and then probably you can amplify it, compress it, do some noise reduction, but that's only like 10% of whatever you do. And and that was pretty challenging to me to get that audio quality perfectly. And it was so overwhelming to both of us at that time, because probably we tried like 4 to 5 softwares and then finalized one, and even then we had so many issues. And yes, it was a fun experience. uh, and then because it was hard, it became hard to keep up with, uh, because let's say a guest agrees to come on a show, then that time should work for me and for him as well, because three people's timings were involved. And also Sai Shekhar got busy with some other projects of his, so we decided to call it quits, and I started this next podcast. And and it was and then I thought I should make a video podcast, because the thing with audio podcast was people were not really like, the idea of podcast was new here at least. So I had to think of a more captivating way to do it, and video podcasts were one, and I wanted to do that. So I started with that. And because now you have to record not just audio, video as well, it was so hard. And I remember my first episode with Shalini Mohan. She was so sweet about it, though. I was recording, and 10 minutes in, my tripod just broke and my camera fell down. And I did she was on call, she was on Zoom call, and I told her, like, yeah, my tripod broke, so let me fix something. And it had like broken into half, so I couldn't do anything. Then I looked for things around in my room and made some, I think I put some high object and then placed my phone with it and then connected it and started recording. And And yeah, I somehow did that. And if you look at my first episode, the audio is just pathetic. You can't even listen to it. And that's because I had changed my microphone to this. And this is a condenser microphone, which is very sensitive to sounds. It can hear you breathe like 5 to 6 feet away. It's that sensitive. And I had no idea about any of it. So whenever I used to record my podcast and then try to process it, it contained so much noise that I couldn't do any noise reduction on it. Even if I did, my voice was getting, you know uh, it was getting disturbed. And thankfully, like, some people helped me out, and I figured out what to do. And also try like endless softwares to get that compression right. And finally I did do that, and now I'm this is the one thing that I'm most proud of, that my the audio level, the the improvements that I've made in my audio quality is, if you look at my first episode and then this episode, it's phenomenal. And even with editing, if you look at my first two episodes, it's just me and my guest on the screen all the time. uh, but now it's I do some multicam edits. If I'm talking, I'm on the screen. If the guest is talking, the guest is on the screen. And at first, doing these things were hard, but later I found some little techniques and tools that I could use, and it made me so good at it. And now I actually look forward to editing my video and audio, because I have perfected that flow. And it's so whenever I'm editing my videos, it's that time where I put on my headphones and just stare at the screen. And I don't think about anything. It has become one of those activities to me. So I really enjoy doing those edits also now. And uh, most of the like most of the developments that I've made are probably internal. You guys might not be able to see it. uh, Even in terms of getting guests, for example, it is it has taught me so much of patience that years of schooling could not teach me. Because I probably like sent mails to 200 to 300 people by now, of which, if you just look at my episode page, all these guests are the ones that who actually replied. And in those list, I think I have one or two solo episodes and one episode with my friend, so you can count that out. So probably seven people replied and actually scheduled and gave me their time to record this podcast. And it's such a uh, time consuming process to get good guests on the show, and it's so hard also to do it. But I like doing it. It's eventually, like, in at the end, when someone actually replies to your email and you make that connection with them, it's so satisfying. It's good. And this podcast has just taught me so much about it. And I've made some podcast buddies as well. We talk about the episodes, our latest episodes, and what I did wrong, or what someone else did, like my other friend did wrong. And we help each other out in terms of guests. And uh, and a lot of things, like probably it's editing or audio editing, or how do you do this, or how do you do that. And that I think I'm very happy that I made those connections as well. And yeah, this is how my podcast started. And this is how it is going. And thank you for your questions, Yogi and Hari. And the next question is from Man Who This, uh, long time supporter of the show. And also, he has his own podcast called Strong Coffee Sakre Jasti. Uh, I'm waiting for the season 2 to come out. But yeah, uh, just putting it out there. And he asks, do check out his podcast. Shout out to Vivek Bankapur. What is his question is, what is your key to happiness? Well, this is such a good question, and I think I can make an episode just out of this question. But uh, I I hope I don't like throw too much at it, and you for you who is listening to this, it's like what is he even talking about? I'll try to make some sense out of it because even I haven't figured it out. But if you would have asked me this question when I was probably 18 years old, uh, I think my at that time I used to think my key to happiness was like anything. I mean, it used to vary from time to time, but the one similarity between all those things were they were materialistic. It was either I have to make this much of money, or I have to get this degree, or I have to get this qualification, or I have to get this job and do well. And it was such a I was probably naive at that point to think like that. But uh, but now if you ask me, it's such a hard question to answer. If But I think my key to happiness right now is to be happy with myself, or to be at peace with myself. And I don't know if it sounds stupid to you whoever is listening to this, but it's so hard to do because last couple of years I've spent so much time with myself alone. It's i i have explored parts within me that I did not know even existed. And and at points, because of lockdowns again and again, and because you get stuck, your plans get destroyed by COVID completely, and you feel like you are stuck and you are alone, you feel like you are alone. I think you become so restless that probably right now the only thing that I want is to be at peace with myself, and the day that happens I think I'll be happy. And it's a very hard thing to even attain. So I don't know how I'm going to do it, but yeah, that is my key to happiness. It sounds like I never really thought that I could think like this. But right now, I don't care how my career is going or how my studies are going. I know with the time everything is going to sort itself out. But right now, the thing that I'm most scared about is what if I get my dream job, or what if I get to live my dream, and then at the end of the day I don't feel fulfilled. That is what I'm more worried about right now, rather than achieving that goal. Because I think in time everyone will do something, but I don't think I can live like this, like so restless and not at peace with myself. So yeah, that is the my key to happiness. And let's take the next question from Sankarshan Joshi Trip. He is my podcast buddy, and please do check his podcast out. He actually started after I started this podcast, and I think the last episode that he put out was episode number 26 or 27, if I'm not wrong. He is just on it. He's just doing episodes after episodes, and I feel so jealous that this is my 10th episode that I'm doing. But yeah, uh, check his podcast out. It's great. And he asks, do you have any regrets? If yes, why? If not, why? uh, I think everyone has regrets. If you're a person who says that I don't have any regrets, it's probably because you haven't asked the right question to yourself. But yes, I do have regrets, but I think I have to classify them in two ways. Like, I have regrets that I don't worry much about, and I have regrets that I worry too much about. And the kind of regrets that I don't worry about is something like me doing some let's say in terms of studies, like I should have studied that, I should have studied this, or I shouldn't have wasted my time doing that, rather I should have done something else, or I should have done something that I was supposed to do. These kind of regrets I think everyone will have, and on the scale of regrets, it's like the least uh, least mistakes that I'm bothered about. But the ones that I do worry about, and I, you know, think a lot about and try to get something insightful out of it, are ones that actually mess up my relation, like my personal relationships with someone. And if I had to chart my progress from 18 years old to now, I have been making some few mistakes, like, let's say, like shouting at someone, or just messing it up just because of your ego or something else. Probably those have like come drastically down, but I still do make some mistakes with friends, family, everyone, and I do think about them a lot and regret about them. uh, if I'm in the wrong, if it was something in my control and I still went and did it anyway, the I think about it, and I feel like, yeah, this is something that I've done wrong. And the thing that I do is I just call that person up and say, look, I wasn't in my right mind, I did it, and this is not an excuse. And I say, and I just apologize for it and try to move on. That definitely helps. But there are some mistakes that aren't in your control, but still you can't help but think what else could have done. But yeah, I don't call up and say if I don't have my mistakes. But again, I think that's subjective. If me thinking, probably I'll be biased if I just think about myself. But I try and do what I can do best. But yeah, I do have regrets. And like I said, if you think you don't have any regrets, you should ask yourself some right questions, and then it's like floodgate opening. So many regrets you will have all of a sudden. But yeah, such a good question. And again, check his podcast out, and uh, keep doing your podcast. I really do love his uh, Q&As. And those are all the questions that I have got. And yeah, those are not a lot because I don't know, no one asked me too many any questions. But yeah, hope that you liked it, and I enjoyed answering these questions. And I hope that I can do a few more episodes like this in the future. And that's about it. Hope you liked it, and also listen to this podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. And thank you.